I'm not trying to be better than someone else. What I'm trying to do is serve the music at its highest level. And the better I get, the more I realize what that is, and to try to come close to circling back to the divine perfection.
Okay, welcome back, or welcome to the Finding Mastery podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michael Gervais, by trade and training a high-performance psychologist. And today, I am really excited to sit down with Elizabeth Pitcairn. Elizabeth is a renowned classical violin virtuoso. And I don't say that lightly. After making her orchestra debut at age 14, she has gone on to travel the globe with her violin, performing as a soloist in various world-leading orchestras at some of the most prolific classical music venues on the planet. Elizabeth is also known for performing with one of the world's most legendary instruments, the Red Mendelssohn Stradivarius violin that was made in 1720. Said to have inspired the Academy Award-winning film, The Red Violin. I hope you've had the chance to watch that movie. If you haven't, you're in for a real treat, and I think we're in for a bigger treat to learn from a true master of craft with Elizabeth. So, in addition to her acclaimed career, she's also passionate about advocating music education. She serves as the president and artistic director of the Luzerne Music Center in upstate New York, which provides world-class music instruction for gifted young musicians. Elizabeth, I am so excited to sit with you. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Like it's an honor to be on your program, and I am performing a concert right after we are finished, so it's all in a day's work. It's a perfect day for me.
Oh, that is awesome. Do you still get nervous?
I do, but I've learned to embrace my nerves as a good thing. Instead of resisting them, I allow the adrenaline feeling to course through my body to the point where I can feel it head to toe and feel the buzz and the sick feeling that comes with it, and work it out of my system in advance of the, let's say, the show, the event. And the farther in advance that I start getting the nerves, the better I perform when I get to the show. The worst part is to have it happen as a rush that's unexpected, and your body has trouble handling the rush of adrenaline. So even though it feels terrible, I mentally say to myself, bring it on, just let it go through.
Okay, so you welcome it. You know it's part of getting ready. It's part of the dynamic of doing anything that matters, whether that's, wrestling down a bear or going on stage or having an intimate conversation. Sounds like you're metabolizing the value of it, and then more importantly, you mentioned it in two ways. You mentioned it, the adrenaline, and then the sickness. Are you talking about the sick to stomach feeling, the nausea, that type of feeling that happens as well?
Yeah, a lot of people call it butterflies.
And you don't.
uh, it doesn't feel like nice butterflies to me, but I can relate to the description of when your stomach feels a flutter. But I have never actually physically vomited before a show, but I have come close to it. And then I went into the most state of calm that I've ever been in my life moments later, where I could do anything. I was so calm and so focused, and it came after the most extreme set of nerves that I had ever had.
Let's open that up. How? How did you do that? And let's call that a 10 out of 10. And if some, let's call that a 10 out of 10 on a internal activation scale. Let's just mark that as a 10 because it sounds like you haven't had, bigger than that. And then so let's unpack that a little bit. And then let's unpack what maybe a 3 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, somewhere in that range feels like. And I just want to set the scene and the context. How many years have you been, I know it was age 3, but give me the number of decades that you've been deliberately, nauseatingly, to use that word again, deeply focused on refining your craft? How many decades?
So four, 48 now. I started playing when I was 3.
I can't wait to get into like how you think about deep practice. There's only a handful of people on the planet that have the level of talent and mastery and skill that you have. So I do want to spend deep time on that. But let's stay at the surface really quickly about this nervousness, this anxiousness. Let's mark the one that you're talking about as a 10 on a 10. And then the moment, like what's leading to the quote unquote sick feeling? And then when you feel it, this is like a very mechanical question. What do you do with it to be able to move it?
Well, the feeling generally inspires a response. It's either procrastination or it's let's get going with this and put in some serious work. And the adrenaline will allow me to practice untold hours with incredible focus and then walk out on the stage and then elevate my game. I hang around Brian too much. My game to a whole new level that my performance is dramatically better in the performance than the dress rehearsal. So I save something back in the dress rehearsal, but I channel the nerves into being able to play with a tremendous amount of energy and put everything I have into it and go into a place where I'm not even aware of being present anymore, just gone. So that's what, you want that help because it can bring you out if you're exhausted and you've been traveling, you're tired, if you're slightly sick, or if you just need energy, then it will give you like a turbo boost to do that.
Okay, so you see it that it does facilitate higher standards or higher, not standards, higher performance abilities. It can also debilitate. And so,
Yes.
okay, so step one that I'm learning is that you embrace that it is part of the equation, and you've chosen this lifestyle. You've chosen this way of living. You could play in your living room and like that's one way of playing the violin, or you can say, no, 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 I need to share it and move it. Whether it's building your nonprofit or sharing the love of music, there's a public nature to it. So you've designed your life to share. And then, so that's part one. And then part two is when you feel it, you say, this does help me. So one, it's part of it. Two, it helps me. And then when you feel it, this is what I want to understand. What do you do at that moment? Do you talk yourself through it, or do you breathe your way through it? Do you, do some exercise? Do you take a nap? Most people can't eat because their stomach is upside down and in knots. Like, what do you do?
I accept it and welcome it. When I was younger, it would turn my legs and hands into jelly because I didn't have enough time spent preparing and I didn't feel confident deep down. So my answer to all of that is to prepare to the point that I know I can walk out on stage and do it, even no matter how nervous I feel, because we can't lie to ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now we're getting into it. This fake it till you make it, it doesn't work. This kind of, self talk that is uncredible doesn't work. And not having reps and time under belt of high activation, nervousness, nearly vomiting. If you don't get to that place, it doesn't work. You need to understand that place too. And what I love, what I love that you're saying, and it's so grounded, is that so I work ad nauseum. I want to I want to have mechanically high skill, high reps under my belt so that when I say to myself, I can do this, you have a whole body of work to reference. You have real history under your belt to say, yeah, I actually can do this.
Yeah, you have, if you believe you can do it, you will do it.
Yeah, right. It sounds so simple. I don't think that you work in kind of tropes or, like I don't know. What are those things like phrases that people throw around all the time, like cliches? You don't work in cliches, do you?
Well, that's an interesting observation. I I don't, and I'm not even good at them, and I accept that. I'm not, someone like Dave. He's so good at current lingo, but what I know is what I know, and my search for how to be the best and to keep getting better.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by ButcherBox. ButcherBox delivers 100% grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken, humanely raised pork, and wild-caught seafood directly to your door. They take the guesswork out of finding high-quality meat and seafood that you can trust. All of their products are humanely raised and are never exposed to antibiotics or added hormones. I recently ordered a box of some of their chicken and seafood products and have been absolutely loving it. Better yet, I love how ButcherBox is consistently offering incredible new deals on their products. I mean, seriously, I don't know how they do it. I almost never see deals like this at the local grocery store. Yet ButcherBox is offering them year-round. Speaking of great deals, the one that they're running right now, they're offering our listeners one of the best steak deals: free ribeyes for a year plus $10 off. Get 2 10-ounce ribeyes free in every box for a whole year when you join, plus an additional $10 off. So if you're interested, sign up today at butcherbox.com/finding mastery and use the code finding mastery to get free ribeyes for a year plus $10 off. That's butcherbox.com/finding mastery and use the code finding mastery to get this special Black Friday deal. Finding Mastery is brought to you by Shopify. Shopify is the all-in-one commerce platform to start, to run, to grow your business. Whether your thing is vintage teas or homemade G, with Spotify, you can create an online store in your vibe. You can discover new customers and grow the following that keeps them coming back. Shopify also allows businesses to reach their customers anywhere, in person, online, and across social networks, with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Shopify has created a really thorough and thoughtful platform. We are currently working on building out a new website here at Finding Mastery, and I'm stoked to integrate Shopify's platform. It was a no-brainer for the next phase of our business, and our team is loving the solutions that they've created for our business. So when you're ready to launch your thing into the spotlight, do it with Shopify, the commerce platform backing millions of businesses from down the street to around the globe. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/finding mastery. So go to shopify.com/finding mastery to start selling online today. Again, shopify.com/finding mastery. And then the code is all in lowercase. You said two things that I want to open up again is you want to be the best. You didn't say I want to be my best. You said I want to be the best. So can we unpack that just a bit more?
From what I understand, the difference between being good and being great is about 2%. So if you want to live in the rarefied atmosphere of the very best that you can be, then you're driving yourself at an infinitesimal level. And that to me is fascinating to go there and live in that. And it is really hard work. You're always working and you have to be driven and not comfortable at, I don't know if it's a personality thing, but just there's certain, I'm fine with being a okay tennis player and going out and hitting some balls. I give myself that leniency because that I want that to be fun. But when it comes to violin, I want to be able to play the violin with mastery, with the kind of precision and perfection and delivery of the music. And I'm frustrated when I can't deliver the music the way I want to deliver it. And that comes through studying more, understanding, and connecting so many things to be able to achieve the result, which is a divine perfection of beautiful music that touches people's souls. And to do that, your technique and your mastery of the instrument and the craft connected to what you have to say musically has to be in sync.
I mean, for the last 30 seconds, all the hair on my body is standing up because it's not necessarily the words you just chose, which is the delivery, but it's where you're coming from. And you're using words that are actually jarring to me. So I want to understand them, like the divine perfection. What the hell is that? Okay. Pun intended. And then you're all, so, and, but before we go to that, which is so, that contrast is amazing to me. Because perfection to me, I'll just qualify it, is like I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in perfection. I'm interested in artistic expression and getting right on the edges of what I know and don't know and being able to stitch it together, whatever it is in that moment. And for me, it's mostly based on relationship, words, feelings with other people, myself, and others. And so there's something there that I'm more interested in. But you use divine perfection, and then but before we get there, you also mentioned and you mentioned it in two different ways, like trying to be my best and trying to be the best. And I'm saying this out loud to myself. Come back to quotes. Okay, so what is it? My best or the best, or how do you wrap your head around those two related but different approaches to growth?
When I'm thinking about my standards, I long ago put away, I think in my early 20s, I let go of the insecurities of feeling like I wasn't good enough and started judging myself according to my own personal standards. Yes, hearing my colleagues and hearing how the best in the world did things, but then having my own standards. So I'm constantly raising the bar of my own standards. And I know there's no such thing as perfection or the best. In fact, there's one of my favorite expressions is from my USC teacher, Robert Lips, that I studied with. And the reason I moved to California was he said, we practice for perfection so our mistakes are not as bad. And that he talked about balance and he talked about mastery in terms of having everything in balance. And he said to me, Elizabeth, you want your playing to be overall with an evenness. You want a certain kind of a presentation that doesn't, one thing isn't amazing and the other thing drops down and it's not as good. You need a certain type of a balance. I'm not trying to be better than someone else. What I'm trying to do is serve the music at its highest level. And the better I get, the more I realize what that is. And to try to come close to circling back to the divine perfection. Um, can I explain what divine is? And perfection is not there. We are not perfect as humans. So we can't be perfect on our own. And I don't know what happens when I go onto stage and I go into my zone, but something happens and I often feel like I'm a conduit. And I know that what I'm doing with the music and bringing this beauty and peace and all kinds of emotions is a powerful thing for people's souls, for mine and for the audience, and we go on a journey together. So it would be on my part to let them down, to not deliver that experience is not fair. And people feel when when you're really able to do that and make a beautiful phrase that's an arc. And how do you do that with a violin in your hand and a bow in your hand? You're not a singer, but you want to recreate the experience as if you were singing.
It's beautiful. You your depth of understanding has led to this question for me, and I've never asked this question, which is, do you feel as though you're a conduit of the music, or are you part of the music? Are you the music?
I would say the former. I would say the music is flowing through me.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to sort out is you see it, so you're a conduit. So the music is somewhere and it's flowing through you and your instrument and then expressed, through sound and vibrations. But so you don't see yourself as the music.
I suppose I could say that I become the music.
Yeah, that's it's a new thought for me, and it's new based on the way that you were just talking about how one, there's a responsibility that you hold. There's a posture of serving the music, which and the music was created by somebody. Put this note here and that note here, and then hold the contour of those two, three, four, five notes in a row in a certain way. That's when when you start talking about balance, I was thinking about like the contour of it, the shape of it, and I'm not using technical words, but it's just the way it feels where it's not like, oh, what was that? And so if I can, if your quote unquote divine perfection, if your high level of mastery can allow me to get lost in the unfolding contour of the notes, then you've created an experience for me that is different than if I'm navigating when is the next sharp, or like funky note gonna happen and bracing myself for it, if you will. Okay, this is good because be- you also, in your approach, so you started at age 3. Hold on. I got to watch you play. I want to make sure everyone knows that is that it was an intimate hall. It was full capacities, maybe 200 people. It was quote unquote designed for the most optimal sound experience that one can have. It's at the Brain and Creativity Institute at USC. And it's like, it's incredible the way that it just sounded. And for me to be able to watch you play in that moment, I brought my son and, and my wife was there and we are able to just like be lost in your music. So I'm saying this with like a personal experience under belt that was a special moment. All that being said is that there's a responsibility that I feel. There's an intensity, a fire, there's a serviceness that you have, and it's a really unique tension between the two. So let me take a quick pass. At age 3, you're introduced to music and you started practicing. And you probably had some appreciation, but there was a lot of parenting involved. I'm making up a narrative here. And then there was a pivotal moment, I think, probably in your life. And that was when you were gifted the red violin. And so, can you talk about the responsibility that you feel and how some of the earlier experiences and then when you're gifted the red violin, how that shaped your not only your personality, but um, the way that you've set up the rest of your life?
Well, absolutely. There was a quality of why me, but there was also a quality of understanding that this was going to happen to me. I think I knew that this was going to happen to me from a young age for some reason, and I don't have a way to explain why or how, except that I was born into a musical family, and even when I was in the womb, my mother was teaching and playing her cello. She went to the Juilliard school, and I think it started with that. I mean, on her due date, she was teaching her lessons, and yeah, so I had that sort of as a role model growing up, that kind of ethic. And my father was very musical and had perfect pitch that he inherited from his mother, who was Dutch. And so I didn't know I had perfect pitch until I was 10 years old, and I didn't know that not everyone had perfect pitch. I didn't even know that. For me, hearing a pitch and saying what it is the same as us seeing the color red and saying it's red. I mean, an A is an A. So when 10 years old, when people discovered this and freaked out, I was surprised. At age 8, my mother had a cassette recording that she played in the car. We lived in the country, so we drove, it seemed like hours everywhere to get anywhere. And so she was playing this violin concerto over and over. I was a great violinist from Odessa. And I was 8 and I would lay in the back seat in the car. It seemed like hours on end. And I listened over and over to this violinist playing. And clear as day, I could see that it was me standing there on that stage playing that piece. And I asked her when I would be able to learn it. And she said, when you're 14. Well, I was 8, but it's the hardest violin concerto written. It's by Sibelius from Finland. And I didn't end up learning it until I was in my early 20s. And finally, when I stood on the stage and heard the orchestra, the live orchestra, just playing that, and I was actually playing, that was quite a moment. But those things were so real to me. And I think that my mom always planted something in my head. Maybe she said, oh, you'll have a great violin, or she was she knew how much a great instrument is instrumental to a young person's development into their concept of sound. They're really, I mean, just imagine a race car driver trying to navigate a race course and they never get a decent car to drive. How are they supposed to learn what it does? Or someone, or an Olympic horseback rider, and they don't have a great jumper to go over the fences. And so that's kind of what that violin was. And it wasn't a gift, it wasn't a present, it wasn't that kind of runs around the media as a narrative. I don't know where it started, but it was nothing of the sort. It was a tool. It was a working tool to have the best equipment possible at a very critical time where instrument prices were skyrocketing out of sight in the late 80s, early 90s. They were just going up, and this was breaking. And my mother was right. In today's dollars, it would be completely out of sight, unaffordable. So that is why, a 16, almost 17-year-old girl got that violin at the time that she did, because of those factors. And it was the timing of the Red Violin coming up for auction in 1990 at Christie's of London, that hadn't been on the market in 45 years. You're lucky if you see one of those in your lifetime. You're not going to see it again. They don't come and go. Something of that magnitude in the top 10% of the instruments that Stradivari ever made is not going to surface repeatedly. It's going to get bought and it's going to be held for a long time. So there's only a couple of owners that we've ever known about. And I'm just lucky that, and you talked about responsibility, talk about a responsibility to look after it and take care of it. But a greater responsibility is what you do with it. And I think serving my purpose and serving people and helping people and my passion for youth and education has channeled all that gift into a real purpose here on this in my lifetime.
Who were the previous owners?
It was Lily von Mendelssohn, who was the daughter. So all of the Mendelssohns are descended from the great philosopher Moses Mendelssohn, but her father was Franz von Mendelssohn. This is in the early 1900s in Berlin, and he was a noted art collector. They were a banking family. They had a quartet of Stradivarius, which in today's would be valued at well over $150 million. If you could even get one, there's only 10 violas. So. And then before her was Joseph Joachim, who was a Hungarian soloist, composer, great violinist, who's one of my all-time heroes. And so I was stunned to learn that he had it. And that was part of the trail of discovery, trying to figure out where this instrument was. We still don't know between, let's say, 1880 and 1720. There's absolutely no record, but the condition of it is remarkable. So someone took really good care of it. And then one more after Lily, it came from Germany to New York City in 1956, where it was in a private collection of an amateur business industrialist violinist who never played it in public, and actually traded in his own Strad and additional monies to purchase the Red Mendelssohn.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by Ice Barrel. So recovery is one of the most overlooked and essential staples of consistently performing at a high level. So when we think about recovery, we often think about sleep and nutrition and stretching and all that good stuff. But one other well-researched and powerful recovery tool that you may be missing is cold water therapy. And that's why I'm stoked to introduce to you Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is a cold therapy tool, and they offer an easy way to bring ice baths to your routine. They have a clean design. It's a compact footprint. It's designed for you to experience the benefits of cold therapy from the convenience of your home. Whether it's an apartment balcony or backyard or garage, Ice Barrel makes cold therapy easy. It's portable. It's convenient. All you have to do to get started is to fill it up with water and ice. I've been loving it. Some of the things that I notice after I use it, there's a sense of better recovery, like I mentioned earlier. But after I get out, I definitely feel switched on. Like my brain is fully alert, my mind is switched on, my mood is epic. There's just an aliveness about it that's amazing. And they're hooking us up with a great offer. So go to icebarrel.com/finding mastery. And then when you do that, you get $125 off your order when you use the code Finding Mastery at checkout. If you're into it, I want to encourage you to check them out. They've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free, really. And so once again, it's Ice Barrel, BARREL, icebarrel.com/finding mastery, and use the code finding mastery to get $125 off your order. Finding Mastery is brought to you by Pendulum. We've all heard how essential a healthy gut microbiome is to overall health and wellness. And you're probably not going to be surprised that many of the off-the-shelf probiotic products, they lack sufficient scientific evidence to back their claims. And that's why I'm stoked to partner with Pendulum. They are pioneering the next generation of probiotics through cutting-edge research and development in microbiology. Their novel anaerobic strains, they're rigorously tested, they're DNA sequenced, and they even grow them in the state-of-the-art facility using a method that mirrors the conditions of your gut. I mean, when it comes to probiotics, I am bullish. And what I really appreciate about Pendulum is that one of their products was tested in a double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial specifically for subjects with type 2 diabetes. Pendulum is the first and only brand on the market to offer a keystone strain called Akkermansia muciniphila in a daily probiotic. This strain is important for gut health, with a few key benefits, including strengthening and regulating the gut lining, nourishing the microbiome, supporting health and weight and metabolic function, as well as improving digestive and GI function. So if you're looking for a new probiotic, I want to encourage you to go check them out. To get started and to receive 20% off your first month of a Pendulum membership, head to pendulumlife.com and use the code FINDINGMASTERY at checkout. So that's Pendulum, PENDULUM, life.com, and use the code Finding Mastery at checkout to receive 20% off your first month. Bring me into that moment. You're loving violin at this point. You're loving playing. Like it's a thing for you. This isn't like casually mom's wanting you to play more often and fighting you to like get your 10 minutes a day in. It's not like that, right?
Yes and no. I'm sure if my mom at that point had said, when you're that age, you're exploring life, and I was always so, kind of lonely growing up in the country and with not many people around, and I had a driver's license, and I had friends
Whoa,
at
whoa,
school, and there
whoa,
was
whoa, whoa,
prom,
whoa.
and
Wait. You just can't drop that in. I was really lonely as a kid. I mean, keep going. Now you're painting a different picture for me right now, which I love this contour. Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit more. Is that I don't know your family dynamic from an economic, financial standpoint, but I know your family's family. Like, you guys have a massive industrial business, and so the shorthand is like you guys were doing pretty well, but I don't know the dynamics there. And then, picking up the violin at age 3 is a little intense, right? And then, so this is why I'm trying to understand the family dynamic a little bit. And then you add lonely to it because it's going to set the stage of like how you practice, why you practice, and then pivotal moments that you either ignored or captured, the ones that got away or the ones that you just reeled in really nicely. So what do you mean lonely?
well, at a certain point, I can remember and I can tell you all the things that happen, but I don't have an emotional charge behind it anymore. So I have the memories, but I
Mm.
don't, but I'm a completely different player of late because I went through that process to come back to violin with love and the knowledge of how to play it, but none of the anxiety and the tension and the insecurity that I felt when I was younger. So we were lonely. I grew up on um, 80 acres in the country. We didn't even have a center of town. We have a township. There's no, and then my friends and I had to practice almost 4 hours every day. And often practicing was kind of used as a weapon um, to, so if I wanted to go see my friends, I had to practice, and if I wouldn't cooperate, I couldn't go until I was done practicing. And um, to the point that there was never a day off. Um, but it, people ask, was it child abuse? No, it wasn't. It was just I had driven mother, and everything she did was because she saw this dream of me being this soloist, and she knew I had what it took. And I also believed it. And she always, deep down, I had that belief that she instilled in me from a young age that I could be all of that. And I was, of course, in your mother's eyes, you're the best. But she made me believe it. And
How did she do that?
she she believed it, and so I believed it. So she would say things to me like, "You have an extraordinary gift, Elizabeth," and she'd say that you're the way she would say, "Oh, the way you play Bach," she would just say, "That's that's extraordinary," and your gifts. And she would just talk to me about how good I was. But then the flip side was that performance didn't go well. The criticism was staggering. I would look out to see her face when I was done, and she and then I would just hear about what I had done wrong. And fair enough, because I was never really prepared. I was always trying to get out of practicing, and I just wasn't accepting that that was my path. I was just, if I could, it's like if I could read The Power of Now and go back and be a kid, but it's what I do now. So here we are now. I accept that the sacrifice is all the practicing, but it's what I overwhelmingly love to do. And so I don't fight it. But as a child, I kind of knew that she would make sure I got it done. So I didn't take any responsibility for myself. Hence, at that point, had she said, okay, um, it's up to you now, and you can do it or not, but if you don't do it, we're going to sell the instrument, and there'll be no more lessons. I think that by the age of 14, I for sure would have taken it on, and it didn't happen. I can't go back and redo it, but
Okay, so
there were
definitely pressure in the system, right? There was high stress to practice. There was disappointment when the performance was, or critique, and it's verbal, nonverbal as well. It sounds like when the performance was below standard or just bad, and and you did have like an appreciation. You had a bit of a vision. You had a like a talent for it, but it is really. I'm glad we're talking about this because it's really rare for a 6-year-old to be grinding, to do the 4 hours a day type of work. So let's talk about practice. What is the psychology or the mindset that you hope people hold as they're going through the 4 phases of practice? So it could be something, I'll give you a couple different ones, right? Like, um, well, let's call it a mindset of perfection. Like even
oh
during warm-ups, like this has to be
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
Or it's like, no, I'm cruising, I'm going, and like I'm putting in the work. And
okay.
actually part of practice is making a mistake and figuring out how quickly I can let go of it. And like, how do you hope that they hold their mind or mindset during practice?
That question right there is everything. If when we actually execute what I'm going to say, this is my understanding of what to do. It is a true hold. So I'll put myself in the place and time of the event I'm preparing for. And sometimes I'll have a flashback when I'm on stage, and I'll have a flashback to the moment 2 weeks ago at 11 a.m. when I was tackling that particular issue in the piece that I needed to solve. And I'll have a premonition at that moment at 11 a.m. in that moment, and I'll think the work that you're doing right now on this passage is going to translate into your performance 2 weeks from now. And this is the moment where you're accomplishing that. And that's because I'm so, I almost, I can picture myself in the concert hall in real time and playing for people. So it's real. And I'm 100% focused on the work in that moment.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you use your imagination to tune your focus so you can stay locked in, and you see yourself or the environment that you might be in later to increase the activation. And so it's a little bit like this, you're using your mind to create a stimulus that isn't naturally in the practice environment so that you can stay locked in and focused. And when you do that, it sharpens your ability to perform and practice. So I think awesome. And the discipline to do that is noted. Let me ask you a handful of questions. When you use your imagination, do you see yourself in your own body or do you see yourself watching from a different perspective?
Hmm. I put myself physically there, like on the stage of Carnegie Hall. Or I can, I'm there in my practicing. So I put myself there on the stage. The people are there, everything's there. I'm on stage and I'm delivering in that moment, and I'm analyzing how does it sound at that moment.
Are you in your own body, or are you watching yourself from somebody who happened to have a seat on stage?
Oh, I would say I'm in my own body, because in my mind, I see my hands. I see what I'm doing. I'm looking at what I'm doing. I'm right there.
And then do you see it in color?
Yeah.
And do you play this movie in real time, or do you slow it down?
I think real time, because it just heightens my listening and my and analytical and critical thinking abilities in the moment to decide, um, if I just played something that no one would ever hear, or if I'm playing, if I'm delivering it at that moment with the perfection that I need to play it with, um, and it makes it real, for
Okay.
me to, yeah.
Yep. So what you're doing is you're not closing your eyes. Let's just be really concrete. You're not closing your eyes in a non-practice environment and seeing yourself perform later. That's not what we're talking about. Maybe you do that, but right now what we're talking about is you're in your practice chair, you're holding your violin, you've got your instrument, and then you're using your imagination for a moment to set the context of the environment of a high pressured, a a performative environment. And then that probably kicks up your heart rate just a little bit. It dials in your focus to lock in, and you are looking down using your eyes, either in your imagination or concretely looking at your instrument. But it's like the background is not the practice background. The background using your imagination is the performative environment. So you're amplifying the activation internally by creating through your imagination. You know, it's like rubber bullets. No one's actually there. And then so just one more double click. You said I analyze. Is that Are you coaching? Are you critiquing? Are you curiously observing? What is that quote unquote analyzing? What's the contour of that analyzing?
Well, I'm listening. Basically, if I just, let's say I recorded it and I laid down the track, and then I listened to the playback, and I'm like, well, is this good enough to go out on a CD right now? There can't be any scratches. There can't be any, little imperfection in the sound of the bow going across the string. The Basically, did I like what I hear? I had a similar experience um, when I was about 21. I won a competition to solo with the Philadelphia Orchestra. It was a big deal to come home, and it was a moment of truth for me, because I got to play with the Philadelphia Orchestra as a result of winning the competition. And it's the Philadelphia Orchestra, my hometown, and they're, my opinion, the greatest orchestra. And they play their opening interlude, and then I come in, and it was a Mozart concerto, and I come in, and then my first three notes are alone of the piece. I heard my sound, and then I heard the orchestra, and then they enter very softly, and now I hear my sound rising above the orchestra, and it was a total out of body experience. I wasn't. I just stood back, way back, like in the hall, like a person in the hall listening. And also, I felt my grandfather, who's no longer alive, too, because that's where he always went and listened to the orchestra. And I heard my sound rising above the Philadelphia Orchestra. And at that moment, I said, okay, do you like what you hear? This is it. This is everything. You've worked your whole life for this. What do you think? Do you like it? And it was the best I had ever played. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I've done it. I'm here.
I would not, I got chills. I would not recommend that you're evaluating while you're doing it, but it does happen, right? That it does happen. But you used a question. Do you like what you're hearing? Is that the question you said?
Yeah.
Do you like what you're hearing? And then, because that, okay, so let me tell you why, like I'm being a little cheeky. because this is how it happens. And most people, if they open themselves up for the question, like, do you like how it feels? It is it's like the hard drive is running a different program and it kind of slows everything down. So you have less available internal resources to adjust to the unfolding next moment. And so in that moment, it's dangerous, right? But when it happens, um, and you answer it, yeah, this is great. There's an on-ramp into like a little bit more space. But if you answer it like, no, I don't know, will they like it? It doesn't matter what I like. And now there's this whole other narrative going on, which is like, oh God, right? Okay, we got problems here. So it sounds like you said out of body, because it sounds like you were entering into a flow state. And I'm using that word technically, where there's
Mhm.
action and awareness are unfolding together, and it's just a kind of a oneness with what you're doing. And then you were able to manage your grandfather's perspective, your perspective, ask a question, answer the question, all while being able to have your fingers be on automatic and hitting the notes on point. And so, all right, okay, that's fun. Sorry for the long kind of narrative there, but that's really cool that the way you described it. And there's two things in here. You said this was the moment. So it sounds like your philosophy is that there are big moments in life, as opposed to a philosophy which is like, it doesn't matter if it's this orchestra or that orchestra or this small room or this large room, it's another moment to share my art. So it's another moment, another opportunity, as opposed to it's a big moment. And so I want to make sure I hear that correctly.
Yeah, it was a defining moment for me.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by Sundays. If you're like me, your dog is a really important part of your family. What are you feeding them? I feed him Sundays, and he loves it. So Sundays, it's the first human grade air dried dog food. And it's the only one I use now with my dog. Combining the nutrition and taste of an all natural human grade food, all designed with the ease of zero prep, ready to eat meal plans. Sundays is the best way to feed your best friend. So, unlike most human grade dog food, Sundays is gently air dried and it's ready to eat, versus the other brands that I have tried these too that are cooked and frozen instead. And you got to kind of do something with them to prep it. And there's a whole cleanup thing on the other side. Not with Sundays. It's as simple as scoop and serve, and then you watch your dog just go kind of nuts over it. And so, all of Sunday's ingredients are easy to pronounce and healthy for dogs to eat. How about it? Head over to sundaysfordogs.com/finding mastery. And then use the code finding mastery at checkout for 35% off your first order. It's just like it sounds. Sundays, Sundays, for FOR, dogs, DOGS. Sundaysfordogs.com/finding mastery and use the code finding mastery to receive 35% off your first order. You're conjuring up, because of that feeling, you're conjuring up for me the gratitude I have for the person that put us together to be able to learn from you. And so Brian Werdesheim, and he's my financial advisor. And so like we're talking about the podcast, we're talking about things we're interested in. And I said, I haven't had the chance to have a true master of an instrument on. And he says, oh, really? And so he says, well, what about Elizabeth? And I said, oh my God, Elizabeth? And I said, and so I got really excited that I got to meet you and, listen to you play, which was from another mutual friend, David Belasco, that we both know. He introduced me at USC to your work. Would you be okay if I called Brian right now? Because I'm super grateful and just feeling kind of flooded about it. And he's told, in preparation for this interview, he told me when he walked through like your life, and because you guys know each other really well, there was like amazing things that um, that he added perspective with. And so I don't know, would it be okay if I give him a jingle? Would you be cool with that?
Oh, I would love that. Let's talk to
Okay,
Brian.
let's see if we can do this. Okay. Can you hear the phone?
Michael.
Hey, Brian, I got a little surprise for you. Can I put you on air? Can I put you I'm on the podcast with Elizabeth Pitcairn, and so
Love surprises.
you do love surprises.
I
Okay,
do.
Elizabeth, do you love surprises?
Absolutely.
You do. Okay, good. All right. So one, we're talking about thank
Wow.
you for the introduction, and then the second bit is like, can you explain in your understanding of Elizabeth, and as you guys have been long-term friends?
Well, yeah, I'd love to. When I think back over the years that we've had this great friendship, which probably is more than 10 years, maybe 12 years, I still remember the very first time I met her at her home. And she was doing a private recital for about, I don't know, 15 people. So that in of itself was exciting just to be in that room. But, then, I remember listening to Elizabeth for about 45 minutes. And it was such an emotional experience that it literally brought me to tears. And I think in the world we're living in, there's so much that distracts us. To be able to sit there in the peace and quiet of her beautiful home was like a life-changing experience for me. And that really laid the foundation for what became a great friendship. So when I think about Elizabeth, I think about her just in so many dimensions. So a lot of people, don't know that, she's truly dedicated her life to this instrument. And, not only that, but she has a camp. I don't know where this woman finds all the time to do all these great things, but it's really awesome. And there's just something about her where I think she understands, um, you know, what a gift she's been given.
Oh, Brian, you put a huge smile on my face. Just hearing it makes me think of all the things we've done over the last 12 years.
Very cool. So, listen, relationships are what it's at. Your relationship with your instrument is fascinating to me, and your relationship with the unfolding experience. And I've only have just a handful of questions here left, just two or three questions. Okay, one is when you make a mistake, what do you do with that? How do you frame the mistake, and then technically, what do you do if you're performing?
We talked about practicing and what you do when you practice. The next step is practice performance. So I have my piano accompaniment. I mean, if I'm going to go solo with an orchestra, you only get two rehearsals, and you get them when you show up, and it's the day of the concert, maybe the day before. So you have your rehearsal pianist, and you drill as much as possible. So back in college, for example, we would play every week in the studio master class and just drill it and drill and drill it until it was ready for public. And that gives you a sense of all of that. So so you are practicing for that ultimate perfection. Then when a mistake happens, um, the you want to make your mistake go away before, as it's happening, you're correcting it. And sometimes you correct it before anyone else can hear it, and they don't even know. Um, but otherwise, if you have, I trained to be able to avoid catastrophic mistakes, mostly from my own nerves, because I would get so nervous that I would create some kind of um, calamity. But I taught myself how to keep going no matter what, so I don't stop no matter what, and I can always get back on. So that was, sort of step one to getting that. And then I think it's that type of performance practicing and putting yourself in that, visualizing that you're actually in the performance, um, so that you have ultimate command, and then studying the piece from all different angles, from all the four types of memory. I use my visual, my my aural, my analytical, and my kinetic senses of memory to lock in. Should something go wrong on stage, um, I've had a moment where I blacked out. My mind went blank, and I didn't know what came next, and my hand physically jerked to the right place. Um, the muscles, and it was rather violent because they took over, and it went there, and then I kept on going. So so you can't just have your muscle. You need all of it. You need to be able to see the music in your head, in your mind as you're playing. Those are all safety nets.
Elizabeth, you're a legend. I wish that more people, I wish we were doing this live so that I could, one, hear you and feel your music, but also so more people could be exposed to it. And so hopefully there's a time that you'll be back in California and I'll get the chance to hear and feel, your music again. But I would want to encourage folks to check out your music. Where can they find you? What's the best place to go besides your camp? Like that's one obviously large tent pole that you've placed in the ground, but where are some other places people can go?
Oh, well, I have a website. It's called redviolin.com.
Of course it is.
I had some good friends who were savvy at business and encouraged me to get that website years ago.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thank you for the treat. Thank you for bringing me into how you work with your mind and, being able to share the story of how the red violin has helped shape your trajectory in life and also, how you practice to be one of the greats of all time. And I just want to say thank you. And I really appreciate the contribution you're making to our community as well.
Well, thank you. And um, all the things we talked about today, actually, I'll be thinking about more to put into words how it's possible. But I do want to thank you for um, asking the questions you asked that allow me to talk about a really special and private part of my life, just in such a manner that I really enjoyed this afternoon, this day with you.
I feel that. And thank you. I'm honored that you said that as well. And so I hope you're primed and you're going to go create a special moment for people that they're going to talk about, like Brian talked about for, 10 years from now, saying that it was moving and it changed me. And God, what a cool way to go through life. Are you happy? Because you are like, sometimes masters are not happy. Are you happy?
I am happy. I found a way to be happy after not being happy for most of my life. And that was a shrug. It's not that I was never happy, but I didn't have a sense of peace and acceptance. I don't think I think I was resisting that what goes into it, and I it, there's a difference. I think there were just a few events in the past couple of years, from the death of my father and the pandemic, that shook up my world, and chance to um I had a chance to do some real studying and reading and learning, and to embrace that life is now, uh, and no one makes you feel anything. You take responsibility for your feelings, and the idea of realizing that sometimes we can be addicted to stress hormones, that they can spike uncontrollably, and that negativity can also be an addiction in the mind, and to be able to find a place to drop those, and also not to worry too much about the future, or to detach a bit from the outcome of and let life unfold more naturally, and kind of realize that there's no certainty, but to accept that. And for me, I was always a driver and I had to have things done, and it's been I still am I'm more effective actually slightly detaching and letting things be, and I'm just a happier person. So I've to sum it up, I think that when we find our own place of kind of joy within us, and that we're good with ourselves, um, then that's truly a good place. And one of Eckhart Tolle's quotes resonated with me. He said, "Don't seek happiness, because seeking is the antithesis of happiness. But freedom from unhappiness is attainable now."
Awesome. It's rich. And your commitment to growth and now in this phase of being happy and meaning to be in the unfolding present moment and having a contentment with that unfolding nature is really powerful. And so thank you, Elizabeth. Wishing you absolutely the best.
Thank you, Mike.